Do you see how we sniped? We got Joel on a path, and now Joel has gone to a different CSP. Now Joel's looking at the code of the CSP evaluator during.
By the end of this episode, I'm gonna have a CSP evaluator written.
Technogeek.io/CSP evaluator. Let's go.
Hey everyone, this is TechnoGeek here. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to our latest sponsor, Project Discovery. Now, Project Discovery makes a lot of tools that you probably know of or have even used. One of them is Nuclei, and the latest release of Nuclei is version 3.2. Now, 3.2 comes with a lot of really awesome new features. Two that I really wanted to highlight here for you are the authenticated scanning and the advanced fuzzing support. Now, for authenticated scanning, it used to be that you would have to do all your nuclei scanning against unauthenticated endpoints, or you'd have to add your cookies manually, all that kind of messy. No more. It's all automatic. You can use existing login templates to automatically log in to your application, and then you can run all your existing nuclei templates against an authenticated part of the application now to really increase your coverage. The other that I mentioned is advanced fuzzing support. Now, Nuclei had added way back in version 2.8 the ability to fuzz different things, but now they've expanded this comprehensively across the board. So not only can you fuzz in the normal spots, but you can fuzz within headers, you can fuzz within cookies, you can fuzz within specific parts of the body, whether that's in JSON or XML or form data, and so many more things. So if you want to learn more about what came in Nuclei 3.2, go ahead and check out the release blog post over at nux.gg/podcast. That's nux.gg/podcast. Thanks.
Yo, Johan, welcome to the pod, man.
Thank you.
Very excited to have you on. We, I wanted, so the reason we invited you on this time right now, well, there's a couple reasons really. One, you have been pretty public with your journey into full-time bug bounty, which is cool. And I wanted to kind of interview you and sort of debrief that and see how that's been going. And also, man, you just have the craziest bugs I've ever seen on the client side. It's really inspiring to see. And so I'm hoping we could debrief some of those things. But let's go ahead and start at the very beginning, a very good place to start, and just give me like a little intro into your career path that landed you at full-time bug bounty.
Yeah, sure. So hi, thanks for having me. So my name is Johan Carlsson. So I live in Sweden, and I'm my career path sort of began like a long time ago. Like I'm a bit older than the average bounty hunter, I guess, turning 37 now. And so I was one of those kids who like doing computers like all the time in the late 90s, early 2000, playing games and doing all that stuff. And like I thought that I would end up like a game developer, I guess. And I went to do high school doing programming and networking and stuff like that. But then after high school, I decided to quit computers. Like I decided to not touch them at all. And I stuck to that for about 8 years or something, doing art studies instead, and painting and drawing. And
was that like a technophobia decision? What was that?
Or sort of like trying to be rebellious, I guess, to my friends and.
Okay, gotcha.
Like everyone just, I mean, everyone started doing like. We started like a collective, I guess you call that. Like we moved in a bunch of friends in an apartment after high school, and just people did like whatever. But most of them just continued on with the technical path, and I decided to go down this like artistic route instead. But then, so like 8 years later, when I got my first kid, or like maybe 10 years later, but yeah, I kind of figured out that I had to earn some money because I didn't really do it with the with the arts.
That's the tricky part with arts, isn't it?
Definitely.
I bet all your friends who went the computer route were kind of laughing then.
Yeah, exactly. They had already like spent, so they were like way ahead of me then, like already in like these really good positions in tech companies and stuff. But yes, I actually pretty like I got a job at Stockholm's University at like the language department, taking care of their like IT stuff. And there I got to like play with like doing like bash scripting and stuff, just to take care of this like 2 rooms of computers. And then I kind of got the feeling again that this is pretty fun, and I'm also like pretty good at it. And then maybe like I should do it because it's like way easier to get money that way. So then I actually took a bachelor degree in computer science. So that was like I started 2018 doing that. So 2021 during COVID, I was done with that, and I got my first job as. So I was educated as just like an engineer to be able to do like whatever, but I ended up in this. As often happened, you get like a job and they say like, do you know React? And I was like, yeah, sure.
Of course. Yeah.
Give me a week.
It starts Googling how to write React.
Yeah, it was actually sort of like that.
That's great.
So I got that job, and then I kind of got stuck in that. I switched jobs after a year to where I am now when I'm not doing full-time bug bounties. But so I've been doing like front-end work, web dev stuff for 3 years, sort of. And like I started bug bounties at the same time as I started working, so yeah, they are like interconnected.
It was interesting to see because you listed in this doc when we were kind of getting like all the info we need to know about you. You listed a bachelor's thesis which mentioned GitLab, which I thought was hilarious because I'm like, man, this guy's like writing a thesis on GitLab.
It's no wonder that he always hacks on it, right?
Exactly.
And I also like I kind of got stuck on GitLab, so it's I've been doing like I didn't even know that bug bounty existed before I started that like thesis project, and since then I just been like keeping at them, I guess.
Dude, it's great when you've originally uncovered bug bounty and your eyes just kind of open up to that world. And it's I so clearly remember as well my first experience with bug bounty, just being at this class that I was teaching actually, and Tommy DeVos just kind of bust into this classroom at my school, and it's just like, hey, bug bounty, and I'm like, who are you? And I'm like, and who are you? But also, that's very interesting.
I had a similar experience because I was doing this like ethical hacking course that I could apply for when doing. So that was the last year of my bachelor. In computer science, you could like pick some courses, and I picked an ethical hacking course. And during that course, which was more like a CTF thing, like you had to capture flags in a virtual environment, that kind of hacking, like scanning and mapping things and finding flags. But then you could get like additional points in the course if you found bugs in bug bounties. So that was my first.
No way.
I went to HackerOne. So actually I could see like when I signed up, I just signed up and I got so like kind of like scared for the whole concept. Like how could I ever like find something here? Like this seems so foreign to me. So
that's really interesting. So did your professor must have known what bug bounty was, or whoever's running the course? Yeah.
And he was actually, so he was then later my thesis guidance or whatever.
Yeah,
what do you call it?
I have no idea, Joel.
your thesis, your advisor, or whatever.
Advisor, that's right, advisor.
So he was part of like picking a target and stuff like that. So he knew what it was, definitely.
So you said you get extra points for this. So what you're saying, Johan, is you tanked an exam, and then you're like, how do I pass this class? And he goes like, all right, got to find a bug. I've backed myself into a corner now. My back's against the wall. Help me. No, that's awesome, man. That's a cool path, and I love always hearing the ways so many people end up into bug bounty and get to where we're at. So I want to come back around to some of your experiences now that you're a full-time hunter, but first let's jump into some of these bugs, man, because I was reading through this, some of the bugs that you wanted to talk about on this pod, and they are awesome. Really, like, very cool. And this first one is a CSP bypass, I guess taking an HTML injection and exploiting it in a really CSP dense environment. So you want to talk a little bit about that one?
Yeah. And this is really like this is where I really like thrive when I get to do this.
I can tell.
And like, first of all, like it's the perfect situation for me as well, because I didn't find the bug myself, like the injection points. I was contacted by Sudi, I guess, like Sudi. Yeah, I will not try to pronounce people's names here, but
welcome to my world.
Yeah. I'll see this.
So this guy, like Ross876, he found like an injection in where you could just like in an input field in GitHub, you could enter something and you got like an error message back, and that rendered like whatever you put there, it just rendered straight back. So it was like completely unfiltered injection. And I guess they could have just like, and they did just report that, and they would probably have fixed it and done everything. But you always want to like gain that like last step. So
especially you, I'm reading these reports and I'm seeing like, oh, okay, he got to the last step. Oh no, that's not the last step. There's another. He's going. He keeps on going.
One more.
All right. Yeah.
No. So I was happy because I know that they contacted some more people, and I was the only one who actually figured out how to like bypass this.
Feels good, man.
So on GitHub they have this CSP that the script source is just one domain. So there's nothing else. There's no nonces or like anything. So you have to find something on that domain, or you're kind of screwed. And they actually are one of the ones that actually also had like this form action thing that I always nag about, like trying to figure out, because people miss it all the time.
Talk to me about that, because I had, Joel and I were kind of prepping for this pod and we were talking about it. It's like, man, I really have rarely ever seen this. So this is like a CSP directive that allows you to control where a form is being submitted to inside of that environment, right?
Exactly.
Wow.
And so the strange thing is that that's not a fetch-based request. Mm-hmm. And that means that it's not covered by default source. So it's one of the exceptions to default source. So even if you put default source in there, it will not cover form action.
Wow. So default source is only for fetch-based stuff?
Yeah,
or
it's it's only for fetch-based stuff, but fetch-based is like a really wide term. So it covers more than it's not just like someone using the fetch framework.
Is that a descriptive term, or is that a technical term in like?
It's a technical term in the specification of JavaScript or stuff. Yeah.
And how does that differentiate from connect source? And like, is connect source, is that going to be different from? Is that also going to be fetch based, or is that?
I think it will actually get blocked as well. I think it's only like for like really strange things that are not covered by this default source. Okay, and gotcha. The form action is like the only thing that you can actually exploit in my experience. But it's so people often miss that, and it's also like if you go to this regular like CSP evaluator that everyone is using from Google, that one will not tell you about the lack of form action. And I had a discussion on Twitter with this guy from Google about that, and they had their reasons. Like that validator is only for like cross-site scripting ish things. Like it's not supposed to tell you everything about CSP, because people are using this in like all these different ways. But I still think that it should have like a mention of
it is called the CSP evaluator, not the XSS exactly. CSP evaluator.
But if you read in the description, it says something about like try to have like a safe CSP for like injections or whatever.
I feel like I can already hear Bebix in the background, like writing a critical thinking version of this that looks at everything.
dude, this is a little bit of a tangent, but Bebix is like really like on top of deving in this community, man. Like he's building the CVSS advisor, the SSRF sheriff, a bunch of Kaido stuff. It's like, anyway, shout out to our boy Bebix.
And I know that there is like one other CSP evaluator that I have been using, and that might actually catch this. I haven't really, but I usually just go for this one as well because it's easier, and then I just look for it if it's missing.
it's important too, because that's kind of the go-to route, right? If you can't get scripts execution, you're going to be submitting forms and trying for CSRFs, or you're going to be doing like autofill password exfiltration.
Exactly.
So it's I think it's a really nice directive to have in place.
Yeah.
So there's this one called CSPValidator.org. This might be the other one you're thinking of, and it looks like it does have some stuff mentioned about the form action clause.
Interesting.
So
Check
potentially, I don't know. I haven't tested it to see like what it does, but potentially this might also be.
This one could be.
I'm not
better.
sure if this is just for validation or if this looks for sort of the issues that you get surfaced with the Google CSP Validator, but that could also be an option. I'm not sure, but definitely worth. If you find a link to that, let us know. We'll put it in the description.
I will try to find it. But it's definitely like it's my go-to thing as well. Like if I cannot do anything else, I try to do a form and like try to argue that you can do like autofill bugs. Some programs accept that, some doesn't really care, but it's still like a valid exploitation path. I think that you can create like a form field, even like hidden or whatever, in a page, and it will get autofilled and maybe even auto submitted and whatever, and you steal credentials and stuff. So
yeah, cool. Absolutely.
I think it's valid
method, in my opinion.
I also didn't know this, but the CSP evaluator itself is actually open source on GitHub. So if you want to extend it, and just add that functionality.
But they don't want it.
Do you see how we sniped? We got Joel on a path, and now Joel has gone to a different CSP. Now Joel's looking at the code of the CSP evaluator.
By the end of this episode, I'm going to have a CSP evaluator written.
technogeek.io/CSP evaluator. Let's go. Okay, I'm sorry, Johan. Back to we've grilled you on CSP enough now. Yeah, go ahead.
No, so one of the things that I wanted to do, because I could inject like arbitrary HTML, right? So there was like a form in the page. So the other thing that I usually think about then is to like just form hijacking. So you could do like add these like input elements, and you on the input element you say like form action and form, so you can like change the actions and targets and stuff of the form. And you could potentially then, if you can do that, you usually can steal like CSRF tokens, because you can change the target of the action of the form, and you can submit it and you get the CSRF, and maybe you can like escalate from that. So
it's interesting. So it's on the input element itself, right?
Yeah.
Like the
so it can be outside of the form, because you can also put like a form, you can point it to which form your is going to use.
Does it take over the entire form, or does it just take over those specific elements?
It takes over whatever it will add itself to the form, so everything that's already in the form will still be there, but you can change the action, and you can change the target, and you can change some other stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, but then, very cool technique.
So the problem then was that I couldn't like exfiltrate it anyhow, because it was a quite strict like form action. I think that you could actually hit some other endpoints with it. I don't remember, but what I ended up trying to do was to actually change the form action to like an internal, to just hijack the form to like target some internal API. So just you're doing like a client side attack instead, so like changing it, and you can also add like all of these new like input fields that will also be, so you could fill it with data that this API route would need then. So I was really happy with that, and I fired it off and nothing happened, and I was like super confused. And then so this was the only time, and the first time I've encountered this, that they had like CSRF protection per form. So like a form,
crazy,
they fetch the form, and it has a CSRF token, but it's only valid for that path that it's created for.
Did you experiment to see if it was like deeper than that? So like, for example, on a page that has two forms, you couldn't swap one CSRF from one form to another form on the same page, or is it?
I think it actually gets back to like the final bypass later, that it's actually used this like hotwire stuff, because it fetches the forms as like a building block and puts it in the page, and somewhere in the back end of this Rails thing you can enable this like CSRF by perform thing, and it creates this protection for your whole page, sort of.
Wow.
So that's some sort of feature in Rails. I haven't looked too deep into it. I just Googled it and figured out like, okay, so this will not work. Then.
That's super frustrating.
Yeah. But so that will lead into the actual bypass, which is like when I was like researching this, I saw that everything was nested in these like weird elements that I haven't never seen before, like turbo frames. So like I searched in the page for it, and there was like a lot of turbo frame mentions everywhere. So I started Googling for that and found that this is part of a kind of new addition, like a new framework to Rails, which is called Hotwire. I don't know if it's usable outside of Rails as well, but it's sort of like Ruby on Rails version of what you talked about last week, then the HTMX thing.
Oh, geez.
So it's like HTML over the wire, which is, if you look into it, it's actually a concept that exists in all like the big frameworks. So Laravel has its own that is called like Livewire or something, and Phoenix Live View, which is based on whatever you call that, Elixir, right? And some like there are a lot of these, and most like so these ones are actually tied to a specific like framework, and that makes them a bit harder to exploit. Like HTMX is just a JavaScript library, and these are like framework libraries that also have like a small JavaScript piece that you can hook into. So
a back-end component and a front-end component.
Yeah, exactly. And so I can also add that the other two guys already had this like drag and drop POC at this time. So the way to exploit this was actually you kind of like you are on the attacker page and you drag some image to somewhere and you drop it and it kind of closes itself and it drops in it. So it's a bit like you have to do a lot of like user interaction. But I still think that this is like you encounter this everywhere, especially if you have used like Proton has their own like what do you call this, like CAPTCHA thing. That works exactly like that. You have to drag like a small puzzle piece to somewhere.
That's a great point.
So users are really like they are used nowadays to do these kinds of actions
without even thinking
I think
about
it's
it.
a valid but yeah, so back to the Hotwire stuff.
And
so I was
actually,
this.
let me interrupt and get one clarifying factor there. So when you said an image, the way you're doing that is you're taking the text that you want to insert, you're putting that in the alt tag of the image, and then you're dragging it on there. Is that what populates it, or is it something else?
No, it's just JavaScript. So the person thinks that they are dragging an image, but when you click it, there's like a JavaScript event that listens for that, and it fills your clipboard. Or like, your drag keeps your drag thing. It fills it with this payload.
Interesting.
And when you release it, it will fill this form field.
Very nice. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I found this Hotwire stuff that I hadn't seen before, and it seemed pretty simple. Like there's like 3 parts to it, which one of them is not really interesting for this, which is like this event-based thing that is, it cannot cause XSS on itself because the events are only like made in a connection to the backend. So it's it's not the same as HTMX there. But the other
random question really quick.
Yeah.
When you're discovering this and you're going down this rabbit hole, is this through source code analysis or is this from more of a black box perspective?
I found these tags in GitHub, like in the page source or like the DOM, and they confused me because they're not regular elements, so they must mean something. So that was my thinking. So when I started Googling it, I just found this the documentation essentially, where they described that there existed like 2 concepts, like a what was the name of them again?
What? The turbo?
Yeah, the turbo frame and the turbo stream. So the turbo frame is quite similar to the HTMX thing, that you have a turbo frame with an ID in your DOM, in your page, and then you tell this framework to make a request to the backend, and it gets HTML back, and in that response, it will look for another turbo frame that matches the ID, and it will just swap the content in your DOM with the content from this response. So the response can contain like a lot of other stuff, but it will find the turbo frame in the response, and it will just swap it in place without page reload.
It's interesting that it also works in an environment where you've got like just an inner HTML sync, because I would have thought that they would be doing that processing sort of like on the result of a fetch request or like in some other way, but it seems like using this.
Yeah, so it's actually it has like an observer, and this is something that I've used. Rails also have this concept of like UJS, like UIs things that are like, it's reacting to it. They have like observers that looking at the DOM all the time, like, and when there's changes, they react to this.
That's cool.
And this is something that you can often use for just like script gadgets, because it will trigger even if there's new content added to the page. So this is what happens now. Like if you add one of these frames and it's empty, the system will make the fetch to like get this content for you and just replace it. So that's when I realized that I could get like another form, like a more dangerous one. So I picked the one where you can add like an SSH key to your account, because it's
a pretty good
like,
one.
Yeah, and then you don't need to, because you can still not exfiltrate the response. So like even if I could create like an access token or whatever, I cannot get to that token because I will not see the response, because it's still just HTML. There's no JavaScript. But that when I add like an SSH key, I can actually get access to the account because I have the secret key. I just add the public thing. So that's that's really good. A good attack vector. And so I could add that form. So that was all nice. But then that form is added like empty. And that's where these turbo streams come in, because the difference between turbo frames and turbo streams is that when you add a turbo stream, you add a selector and you add like a template, an HTML template. And when that appears in the DOM, it will look at the target that you have specified, like a CSS selector, and it will replace that element that you hit with the template that you
gotta
added.
Be kidding me.
So in that way you could actually like, so my idea was that I first I pull down the correct form, and then I start adding it with like these turbo streams that kind of replaces content in the form with my SSH key and like whatever I need to have it put my data on the victim's account.
Wow. Okay. So now we've dragged the image into this sort of text box or whatever. It's not an image or it's actually text, yeah. From the JS. We've triggered the HTML injection. Then we're using these turbo stream gadgets to dynamically construct a arbitrary frame with the correct CSRF token, and I guess the CSRF token gets loaded.
Yeah, that gets loaded with the turbo frame.
Wow.
So that's like by design, like just coming with the form that you're.
And that's a part of that
fetching,
sort of client side, server side collaboration that we were kind of talking about with this HTML over the wire. Very cool. Exactly. Okay, so how do we get it all the way? Are they just going to press submit now, or?
Yeah. So there was actually like one problem with the turbo streams is that they will execute as soon as they appear in the DOM. And that's true for the turbo frames as well. Mm-hmm. But the turbo frame takes a while to load because it has to fetch this data, right? So I couldn't actually have the frames and the streams at the same time. So there I actually had to use like an older, like a gadget that was present in GitHub, where they have this older thing that is called like data replace with, which is a data attribute from this Rails, the legacy code, sort of like before Turbo. And there you can do like, if you click a button, it will replace itself with whatever you have in the data attribute. So then I had to put the
useful functionality.
So I had to put the turbo streams inside of this on-click thing. So you had to click a button to actually fill the form, and then you had to click another button to submit it. So it was, at this point, it was like a 2-click thing. So because I had all of these gadgets, but you had to drag it, and then you had to click anywhere on the page, because I could fill the page with these buttons. You had to click anywhere like 2 times. So that's not like, it's not a perfect POC, but it shows that it's like you can do something.
Right.
So we reported that, but I wasn't really happy with it. So I kept
How did I know?
And I actually, so at that time, I actually reached out to William Bowling, Vax.
Vax, another great guy to bring on the scene.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I knew that he had done some work on GitHub previously. So, and he was kind enough to share like this really strange click gadget with me, which is code that they have it still on GitHub, where you add a fragment, and this code will try to find an element which has that fragment as an href attribute, and it will click that element for you. So it's like a click gadget. So if you
in the hash, so you put something in the hash, and then if it's is this taking advantage of that sort of auto focus feature where you like?
No, it's just custom. It's just listening for on hash change.
Okay.
And when it changes, it will take whatever you put in the hash, and it will look for something in the DOM that has this exact value as their href, which is kind of strange.
That's crazy.
Like I don't really know what they use it for, but I guess it's used for actually clicking links. But I could also put like an href on a button. Like there's nothing stopping you from that if there's no sanitization. So I could actually make it click buttons for me. So that was
dude, that's clutch.
So that was sort of
so interesting.
The last thing. So now the final exploitation is that you end up on this attacker page. You do the drag and drop, and then while you're dragging, there's a small window opening that you don't really see. And that window is has this connection, like an opener connection to the page, or a parent. Actually, you open it, so it's a parent. And that one is also attacker controlled, so it cannot get the content of GitHub.
Right.
But you can do. I actually think that this is quite a kind of strange behavior from browsers, because if you go to the exact, you do like a location equal something new. It will load that new page. Like you're allowed to do that cross origin. But if you go to the exact same domain, but you just change the fragment, it will not fetch the page again. It will do just like a hash change.
Right.
So in a way,
cross origin too.
Yeah. So it's sort of like a cross origin connection have like a...
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pause that there and just reiterate that for the listeners. So if you guys are listening while you're doing dishes or doing some, task or something, listen to this part, okay? So what he's saying is it's possible for you to do, if I understand correctly, Johan, so correct me if I'm wrong, but a window.open, and if you know the full path of the page, you can specify a hash on that URL. It will not refresh the page, and it will just trigger a hash change on there, which allows you to not refresh the page, but also affect some event to be triggered cross origin on that page. Is that accurate?
Exactly.
Such a cool gadget, man.
Yeah, that's a really strange behavior, actually. I think it should just always force a refresh if you're from a different domain, because you could also use it for that sort of what you talked about, highlighting. But no, okay, that you cannot actually do cross origins. So that's
it used to be. Yusuf abused, I think, this exact same functionality
to cause scroll behavior.
Exactly, scroll fragment based behaviors there. But this is different. One of the things that I really like about what you just specified is you have to know the full path, which you could theoretically if you opened it. It's very 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 reasonable. And then but if you were not to know the full path and you just did window.open hashtag whatever target equals whatever frame, then that would not, because that would be opening up relative to the page where it came from, right? Is that accurate? Yeah. So
exactly. So you have to specify the full thing.
Very odd behavior from the browsers here.
But so that was the final piece that we needed to make it like a zero click after the drag and drop, because now I could make the 2 button clicks, like the click to inject the turbo streams and then the click to submit the form could be done through this hash change events. So I just had to change the hash twice.
By chaining those again. So drag and drop triggers the HTML injection, injects the form, triggers the hash change as well. And that hash change clicks a button, which injects more and another click gadget. And then that changes the hash again and finally clicks on the thing, which will actually submit the form.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh, Johan.
So I was really happy with that one.
Dude,
I wonder if this is how people feel when I talk about mobile bugs.
Yeah, like it's amazing, man. You know, I love client-side stuff as well. And just seeing this is just spectacular. So I'm going to actually, hold on, let me see if I can find, I haven't pulled this guy out in a while, but is it doing it? Is it playing?
Nothing happened. That was a fail.
You know, hold on. No, change it to live. Hold on. Well done, Johan. That's amazing.
Like in the end, I know that I saw someone ask something about this on the Discord. Like if this was worth it for ReDoS 876, like in the beginning. And I actually think that he didn't. Like we split this and it still didn't really push it high enough to become like maybe we shouldn't leave out like the final piece from GitHub, which is that to perform this kind of actions, you have to be in like sudo mode. Which if you have been using GitHub, you know that if you try to do like anything that is like change the name of a repo or something, you will be asked to like put in your password. And then you're in sudo mode for like 4 hours after that. So you have to be in that mode for this to work, sort of. So that's also part of you kind of have to target people at the right time if you were to like exploit it, like send the link at some time in the working day or whatever.
Couple questions here, okay? One, so normally when you see this drag and drop behavior, you're doing this into an iframe. And in this scenario, I checked the CSP on GitHub. It's no frame ancestors. Of course, you know, if they're taking CSP this seriously, they're not going to let their page get iframed into any random page. So this was all done via window open sort of, what's the name of that research that came into the cool research tab in like cross window forgery attack sort of situation, right?
Yeah, sort of. Like we were like navigating. So when you're about to release it, you have actually kind of just switch it out for GitHub's normal page. So there's one of those flows in the paper you mentioned, the one when you kind of just close the window or switch or whatever.
Yeah, I'll link that down below. That's cross window forgery by Paulos Bello. There we go with the names again. But yeah, so you're able to switch the page and drop the text into the page.
So I really agree with GitHub here to put it like they put it on Medium somewhere, and I think that's fine. I just had a really good time with the CSP bypass. So for me, it didn't really matter, and
Feels
I think
great.
we at least doubled the bounty from
Excellent.
it. But,
yeah, and mediums on GitHub aren't anything to scoff at either. GitHub pays very well, so that's amazing to see. Okay, so that was one of the questions was, okay, you're doing this sort of cross window, so that's pretty cool. And the other thing that I wanted to kind of bring up and highlight here is this whole concept. So we talk about gadgets on the pod a lot, right? One of the things that we haven't talked about quite as much is this whole concept of a script gadget within the page in these high CSP environments. How can we convert, HTML injection into something a little bit more functional using these pieces of script that already exist on the page? So it's reading through a couple of your other pieces of work and this as well. It's become clear to me that this is one of your jam, and this is in my mind you're one of the most foremost experts on the specific sort of gadget of sorts. So I want you to give us a little bit of insight into how you discover these sort of events, and obviously you can look at like hash changes and stuff like that. So anytime we're trying to exploit anything in these sort of environments, it's always great to like go to global listeners, open your dev tool, go to global listeners, look at the hash change event, and kind of see what code is going to be running on hash change. But looking at the write-up you passed along to me as well, there's like, there are events happening when there's a specific class of object being added to the DOM, and like sorts of things like that are just way out there. So how are you finding these in the first place in order to construct this like beautiful chain?
I think it's quite funny, because when I started, like I was looking into, so when I did my thesis way back, the Gitlab thing, we were, one of the things that we did then was that we downloaded like all the disclosed reports from Gitlab into a spreadsheet, me and my thesis partner. So when we started, we read like, and at that time I didn't know anything about this like security or like. But we read like all of these reports, like one after another, and some things stood out, and you sort of realized that at that time, at least, like William Wax, he was like the main antagonist on GitLab.
Yeah.
Like he was crushing it with the RCEs and stuff at that time on like XSS, and so I just studied his works, and
classic move.
I
highly recommend that to anyone who has the time. Yep.
So
mimicry is the sincerest form of flattery, right?
That's true. Yeah. And from where I was coming from, I was like, okay, so this is how you do it. Like you have to find these gadgets and you have to do all of this, and like because I found my first cross-site scripting like by super accident, just after I had been doing this research, like the thesis paper, for 3 months. Like putting payloads everywhere and stuff like that. Didn't find anything. And then the summer came and I was done with school and everything, and I had passed and everything was fine. And I just got this like feeling. I was at my parents' like having some summer vacation, and I just thought like, okay, I'm gonna just go in and try this. I had this one injection point that I wanted to do something. You could name like a default repository thing, and so when someone creates a project, and it shows you some instructions like run these commands to create an empty repository or whatever, and I know that you could put something in there, and I just went there and just added a super basic like script alert thing, and then it popped, and I was like, what? I mean, I was like,
it can't be this easy.
No, it can't be that easy. And also like I know that I tested this like just a couple of weeks back, and after all of this happened, and later I looked, and the code change was just like 2 weeks old. So it was like super, just like by this accident that I went there, like, and they actually changed the code between me first testing it and then testing it again.
Wow.
That's wild.
It's crazy.
But and then I stumbled, so that popped on my local thing. And then I went to gitlab.com and I was like, yeah, I'm going to get this like super awesome high paying bug now. And nothing happened. And that was my first encounter with the CSP. Like I had never heard about it before. I just opened the console and it said like CSP blocked. I was like, what?
Dun, 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 dun. From that day on, Johan was triggered anytime he saw a CSP.
Yeah. So no, and then I went and just so some people had already used some of these gadgets before on GitLab, and then I found some of my own as well. Just by essentially like reading the source code and like grepping for these kinds of behaviors where it's like looking for. I kind of went from the sink. Like I found places where it did like fetch requests. I have a few reports where I can do like these client side attacks where I could create some element and it will be replaced by some form that I can control the path. And then I can just make like one put request to the API. But with that one request, you can make yourself an admin if it's like an admin who clicks the link or whatever.
It seems to me, just from hearing that explanation and looking at your HackerOne history and that sort of thing, that you're just, this is a function of you being sort of growing as a hacker in a highly CSP'd environment. Because I think most people don't start off at GitLab and don't start off at some of these other more hardened targets that have these CSPs in place. So we're all used to, oh wait, the HTML is reflecting. boom, XSS, game over. But because you kind of grew as a hacker in this highly CSP'd environment, there's always that extra step for you, and it forced you to adapt. And these adaptations look like these script gadgets and these, sort of far out ways to get around CSP.
And you kind of you can see that they are also like shared between in GitLab. You can see even the non-disclosed reports. You can often see them in their like issue tracker later, and you can see like these. So in the beginning I used some of VAX like CSP bypasses, and then I found some of my own, and then I have also seen like other people use mine, and you get like proud, like yeah, way to go, like.
That's great.
And now they actually, like, just a couple of weeks ago they killed one of the absolutely the best ones.
No.
That was like because what you want you want something that also can pass DOM Purify, right, and still work as a script gadget after DOM Purify. And they had like this one that I know like a lot of people have used it. Like I think that Vax found it like 3 years ago, and they have never
spill the details. Come on, let's go.
It was just like a quite same kind of functionality. Like you put they think, at least like in the code, they thought that they were targeting a form, so they were looking for forms, and that a form that had like one class, and classes are like you can put that through DOM Purify. It's
wow.
fine.
I thought it was going to be a data attribute. I'm not going to lie, but it was a class. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it was a class. So this was like a custom code that looked for this class on a form. They called it, but you could actually put this class on anything. But then it looked for an input element in this form. So the input element actually needed to be an input element, but the form could be anything.
And you can get those through DOM Purify?
Input elements are fine, and forms as well by default. But GitLab is actually stripping forms. So that was the good part about this gadget, because it didn't have to be a form. It could be a div or whatever.
That's awesome.
And then it would look at this input element, and for some reason it would take like the title, which is also fine through DOM Purify, and do some sort of like replacement, putting it in the DOM, like whatever you put there. So then you could add like something that popped, and it would also then be valid because it was coming through with like the nonce through the CSP, right, and like inheriting.
Doesn't that need to be
value.
Like it's not, in some cases it's unsafe eval, but like strict dynamic or something like that?
Strict dynamic,
yeah. Okay, but
so
that's what their CSP has, strict dynamic. Okay.
Yeah. So they have nonce and strict dynamic. So it's fine to add stuff with like a script gadget that then adds a script to the page.
Wow, dude. That's awesome. And these gadgets are so complex. And actually I've got a situation. I don't know. Did Monke reach out to you recently with a CSP bypass that he needs on a very highly CSP'd environment, or no?
I don't think so.
Okay, because I've been banging my head up against this for a little. So after this episode, I'm gonna show that to you and see if we can get a bypass. But yeah, okay. So that makes a lot of sense. So
But it also it takes a lot of time. So it's not really something you can do if you're just like skimming through programs, like jumping around, like finding one of these. So when I found some of my own where I could just like inject this like one-click stuff, and I got it through DOM Purify, then I know that if I can just find like one, because you could have like an injection that is like full, but then you can also have these ones that are actually sanitized. But if you can still, so those are like easier to find, because they make that mistake more often than just getting by.
So with these, like, how do we identify these? Are you literally just like grepping through the source code looking for any sort of like dot whatever, like clearly a class CSS selector, like an ID CSS selector that's put into place, and then trying to figure out if they're binding any functions to these sort of classes existing, or is it just reading through the whole thing? And like, how are you identifying these? Is there some trick to this, or?
No, I've been doing it like all the different ways, like putting a breakpoint at the beginning of the JavaScript just to see if it adds something. But then also just like looking at all the places where it's actually using like CSS selectors to get elements and to see if, and usually they have some sort of like main functionality that's kind of like kickstarts whatever all the other JS on the page is going to do, and you can kind of see there if they're like trying to initialize
this reminds me of a bug that I found that is, of course, HackerOne. My 2 weeks is up right now in the middle of this pod, so now I've got to like.
It's always on Mondays.
Somehow it's always in the middle of the pod when I'm trying to like get into my bugs to like talk about something. But the only thing I've ever found that is remotely similar to this is essentially what you just mentioned, which was hijacking selectors for your purposes. So I remember in this one scenario, I believe it was a WAF-based scenario, where I could only get through like on click or something like that. And it was on an element that you couldn't click on or something. And I was able to like name it a specific ID and add a specific ID to the element. And then later down, it would say like, click this ID, like this ID or whatever, .click, and it would hijack it and pop the XSS. And I was like, I am a legend, like, and then, Johan rolls up in here with like this 16 step chain. No, so just to summarize this for the listeners as well. Like I mentioned before, this is a really great example of how a hacker adapts in a different environment, right? Most of us, like I mentioned before, are not really exposed to hyper CSP'd environments. And as we continue to move that direction in the industry where CSP becomes more widely accepted and more, just as time passes and it gets a part of everything as default, we're going to have to adapt in this way. And so it's really helpful for us to look at examples like Johan and how he's adapted already over time to bypass these, because we're going to be doing a lot of gadget searching like this in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and start studying up on all this and try to be ready for that shift in the industry. And I think it's really a great thing for the community that a lot of your reports are disclosed on GitLab, and then you're doing interviews like this where we can kind of talk through the mentality, because otherwise trying to get good examples on how to find these gadgets and that sort of thing would be really tricky. Not gonna lie though, I'm a little sad there's not like just go to the console and like run this and like it lists every single listener for this specific thing.
I think if I were so this is probably one of my problems that I have with my, like when I do my hunting, is that I'm very unstructured and there's probably like some really good ways if you could like sit down and just figure out what to grep for and whatever, but I really don't do that. So I'm just like reading it again and again and just coming back to the source code and just hey man, that approach always that approach works well in the beginning when we're sort of developing this mentality, and it gets you through the first however many. I'll shout out Matan Bear here because I know he also does a bunch of really interesting client side stuff, and he's shown me some things that you can put into the dev console that will list a bunch of really useful listeners and that sort of thing. So I don't have permission to disclose it yet. But I know he's listening to this episode. So, Matan Bear, go ahead and figure out a way to do this. List all of these like CSS selectors or whatever in the source code. And then we can, sort of find some more gadgets like this, because it's really, really interesting stuff here. All right. So that was... Shit, Johan, that was the first bug. We haven't done anything yet. Tell you what, let's move a little bit. I see why your reports are so long. That was one of the things we were going to talk about, later on in your full-time bug bounty struggles or whatever. But I'm starting to see why this is happening. Tell you what, let's go into this pipeline bug, and let's keep this one a little bit more brief so that we can get access to some of the other goodies that are lay on the other side of the technical content this time around. Okay. Yeah, and so this is more the pipeline. This is actually my only critical finding on GitLab. So I'm also really proud of it. Like it was one of my things on my to-do list to finally find like one critical after spending I guess I had spent 2 years when I found it, or something like that. And it kind of represents the other part of my my hunting, which is not based on like technical things in the browser or like knowledge about HTML or whatever. It's like just a business logic application bug. So, and it showcases like how I kind of work in GitLab. So I saw this report. I have seen a lot of reports, like reading through, like when people have been able to like trigger pipelines in GitLab as other users. And I have read them, and they have also always been like a medium impact. And I have been like researching, like there must be something you can do with this that is like higher impact than this medium. Like
that seems a little off.
Yeah, I mean, but so what you usually can do, like what people have shown as a POC, is that you can like download source code from other repositories with this. Like if you trigger it as a victim, you can download their like maybe a private repo or something, and it has a high impact. But they are staying really strict to their like CSP. CVSS score
delegation.
So, and if you don't find a way to like escalate it from only reading stuff, it will not get
just confidentiality high.
That's sort of it. Yeah.
Okay.
But so I had this dream of like one day be able to run the pipeline as an arbitrary user, because I thought that I could do something better with it.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to see one of these fixes going out for this guy. Now I forgot to look up the name of him, but this other person found a bug where you could do this, and I found a bypass to it. And so this is again like sort of like where I feel most comfortable and like where I shine is when I get some sort of like foothold and I start to escalate it and like show impact. Then when I feel like it's getting really fun.
We talk about this from the perspective of an exploitationist, essentially. Like I think your expertise here is as an exploitationist, somebody who can take just a little something that's a little bit off, and turn it into some big, huge thing, right? And versus somebody who I don't have a specific name for it yet, but somebody who finds that initial foothold. It's a little bit more recon centric a lot of time. That's actually not even necessarily in the traditional sense of recon, like, all right, we're scanning assets, running, port scans or whatever, but somebody who spends time fingerprinting the whole application and understanding how all these different pieces come together and finds that one little piece that's a little bit off. And then, you can either hand it off to somebody who's a talented exploitationist or try to attempt that exploitation yourself. But I think just in an attempt to frameworkize that whole the different roles of hacking, I think those two roles are pretty clear, and they're pretty different from each other too. Just because you can find a lot of footholds doesn't mean you can always take it the full distance. So it's cool to see a very talented exploitationist here.
Yeah. No. So what I had seen in the documentation. So this also like just in the documentation, I had seen that if you trigger a pipeline, it will run as the user who triggered the pipeline. So that's all fine. It will run so I could only do it. So I ran the pipeline as another user, but in my project.
Can you give a explanation to what a pipeline is in this context?
Oh yeah, so a CI/CD like pipeline, which is whenever you push something to a code base or whatever in GitHub or GitLab, it will more often than not trigger a pipeline, which it will build and run some tests and whatnot.
Okay.
In a separate environment, like in one of these runners, which are like a sandboxed environment somewhere. But it will also have access to a lot of like environment variables and stuff like that, which is interesting to get access to. But so the initial bug here is that you can run like another user, but it's only in your project. So you already have access to everything in the project. So it's not that impactful. But then you can also read some of the victims like projects. But this thing that people hadn't really utilized before is it was like in the end of the documentation for this functionality, it said that you could also trigger like downwards pipelines or whatever, like creating a chain of pipelines through different projects.
Interesting.
So you could like from this pipeline, you can trigger another pipeline in another project. And this is actually kind of locked down now, so they have fixed like the main issue with that. But at this time,
would you have control over those contexts, or would it just just trigger it?
It will just trigger it like you could sort of target the branch, I guess. Like you want to do it in the main branch if the user have access there. But what you could, so this is also like not super impactful at that time. So that's maybe why they hadn't really cared about it before. But I also like went deeper in the documentation. It also said like, yeah, you can also specify some variables to overwrite. Like when you do this new trigger, you could add variables, and you can also overwrite variables that are already present in this other project. So then I started to look for a gadget where this could lead to, because if you just trigger the pipeline, you have no control of like what's happening. You cannot leak anything more or whatever. But if you can overwrite some variables that potentially that variable is used in like a curl command or whatever, and you can like start leaking stuff. So that was my, at least like the first impact I had there, was that I found one template. So when you build the CI pipeline in these places, you often use like a bunch of different small CI stuff. And some of them are from templates that like GitLab provides that are like helping you with like code quality. So that was the final one that I found that a lot of people use. Like,
we're going to increase the code quality a lot here. In a second. I can feel it.
Yeah, so that one especially was like, they were doing, so let's see. Okay, no, so this one was actually doing like secret detection. So that's good. Okay. It was actually trying to detect secrets. That's
nice.
Great. But this one was actually, you could specify, they are specifying the image. So like the Docker image that the pipeline is going to use. That is specified through variables.
To detect okay, I see.
Just to say like, so whenever you trigger a pipeline, it will find the Docker image to use like as the base for that pipeline run. And so here I could inject whatever, I could target it to like one of my own Docker images. And so that makes it possible to me to do like, I could run whatever code I want now. So I have like RCE essentially, but in this kind of like pipeline environment.
Okay.
But still, that makes it possible for me to do a lot more than just like trigger the pipeline. I can now control the output of this pipeline, and I can also read all the variables and everything. And then just the final step for me to prove to GitLab that this was a critical was to just read through their own discussions. And I found this mention of, so GitLab in their pipeline, they have a variable that contains a real access token that they use to do like more like sensitive stuff. And I just saw that they mentioned it in a bunch of places. My report essentially was like, I made this mocked up version of this, and I sent it, and then I said like, I'm pretty certain that I can do this to your environment right now, and I can get this token.
You didn't even do it in prod?
No.
Oh man, see, this is where like
that's the best place to test stuff. You know, I don't know.
I don't know. That makes sense though. Yeah, you want to try to respect.
But I did actually like. Usually I let things like take its time, but this time I actually reached out to some of the security people on Twitter. So this was of course on a Friday.
Oh no.
So I just reached out to them and said like, I think that this is bad. And then they jumped on it directly. And on Monday they had the patch out.
Well, it makes sense, you've got a team like GitLab, with a highly reputable team. And so to be able to not necessarily take that all the way and do it in prod and hand them their access token, you still have a decent amount of trust that they're gonna not do you wrong.
I forked GitLab, of course. Mm-hmm. So I had like a similar environment, so I can prove that it worked.
That's good.
So it was So it was my POC was like really similar to the real.
And for sure, I think like. It'd be very rare to have a program where you have something like this, where you say, I've decided to stop and I'm telling it to you now. I'm pretty sure this does this, but I want you to check it, versus going ahead and doing it and then having them to like to deal with that aftermath. I've heard of plenty of examples of hackers where that has not gone great.
Yeah, and I have no idea what happens if I trigger a pipeline. Like, maybe because it could also trigger like a deploy or whatever, and like.
Oh shit! Okay,
so like,
that makes a lot more sense now. Oh, you're talking about the Git. Oh, I see.
Yeah. So in my
Holy
report,
crap.
I targeted like the GitLab's main. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that
I
makes a lot
had
of
no
sense.
idea like what would happen if I did it. So I just wanted to prove to them that I have all the pieces to actually run this now in the GitLab main repo and.
So wait a second. Potentially, if you had leaked this token and have access to these repos now, right access, you could have backdoored the GitLab code base. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So that's the.
That is nasty, dude. That would have been so bad. I see why you didn't do it.
No. No, but it was it's like it proves that if you spend the time escalating something, you can make it like you can actually prove that it is as bad as you as like a hunter believes.
Wow.
A lot of times when you stop earlier, they might not agree with you. Like, but if you build this scenario that is very like plausible, I think it's easier to get it through triage. And everything, so.
Very good. Okay, so let me just sort of summarize this one really quick to get through it. So first of all, you're triggering this pipeline as any user because of I guess this is a pipeline on your own repo because of the fallback thing. Is that right?
Yeah. So that. Exactly. So there was this functionality that I sort of like built upon from this earlier report where you sort of ran some sort of just like maintenance thingy. It's some functionality that was broken.
And so you're able to build upon that functionality. You're able to spoof the latest committer. So now you can say, okay, somebody committed to this repo, and now I'm gonna delete the bot or whatever and have it fall back to that user, run the pipeline, and then exfil that token, which is associated with an arbitrary user. Then you're using that token to trigger a different pipeline via this like downstream pipeline feature that you found about in the documentation. And that will trigger a pipeline with a specific set of variables that you provide from your malicious pipeline. And then using that, you find a gadget that allows you to specify an arbitrary Docker file or a Docker repo or a Docker image. There you go.
Docker image.
That's the one. I was like, I know there's a word for this. A Docker image. And that Docker image gets pulled into the runner, executed. So now you've got code execution inside the CI pipeline on this specific repo. And then you can exfiltrate access tokens.
Yes. So I sort of like skipped over the initial part there that you mentioned, but yeah, it's
wow.
No, it was fun. Actually, like I think it's the only time when I actually like properly celebrated afterwards. Like I went out and like bought some flowers for my wife.
There you go, dude. That's great, and that's actually. Perfect transition there, Johan, because we can move into the full-time bug bounty conversation with that as well. And one of the things that Mariah and I do, and something that I've been kind of public about on the pod, because I think it's a really good practice in bug bounty, is doing a proper celebration when you crush something. And so yeah, it's good to see that you actually pulled that off, and it's sweet to say that you went and bought some flowers as your celebration versus like mine of like buying a hot tub or something like that. Yeah. So I mean, do you have
most of the time
go ahead.
No, most of the time I'm pretty bad at like celebrating. It's more like I get this feeling of like if I get frustrated when I fail, and when I succeed, I'm just like, okay, like did it, move on. And so usually I don't get that in that celebration mode, unfortunately. I should do that more often as well.
Absolutely. I would definitely recommend that. And that when you said you often failing, it actually reminded me of something I wanted to ask you about the CSP bugs. These gadgets that we talked about, right? The script gadgets. Would you say that they are often there? Like, is this something that often exists? Like when you're presented with a foothold and you need to bypass these CSPs in the complexity of this modern era's JavaScript frameworks and everything that gets bundled into a page, would you say these gadgets that affect specific, classes or specific data attributes, would you say that they're often in place that allow you to do what you need to do?
I think that they are probably way more common in like big complex applications.
Okay.
But I would say like they probably exist in all of these the big things that you look at.
Wow, dude! I wonder how many good HTML injections I've just let to the side.
So like coming from like a dev background like myself, I know that. So when you're working with these like frameworks, like even with React, or in GitLab's case, they use Vue. And sometimes you just have this like one piece of functionality that doesn't really like, it's too hard to like shoehorn down in this like framework, and you just make some quick like custom JavaScript on the side that deals with some error or some like pop up, or like you're gonna have like a. So one of the ones I found on GitLab was like this. They just wanted to show some like, we're doing this new feature pop up thing. And you have to get that out like really quickly, and like building it correctly might take a lot of time.
Some junior dev like, pushed this through or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Script it together. So definitely like have a look in these like special JS, like the utility folders.
Interesting.
Where they store their like custom code, because that's what's breaking. Like it's way harder to get into like in React or whatever. You know where you to look for. You have to look for this like dangerously set in inner HTML or whatever it's called.
Wow, dude. Very cool. Very cool stuff. Hey guys, real quick, I just wanted to give a shout to the Hacker Content team. They have been absolutely killing it the past couple months, taking the content from the podcast and condensing it down into consumable social media posts, whether it be shorts or text posts or whatever. They've been rocking it. So I just wanted to give them a shout out and let you know that they do all sorts of cybersecurity content as well as social media management. They do technical blogs. They do comprehensive social media management. So if your organization could benefit from any of those types of services, make sure you head over to hackercontent.com, drop them a line, and mention the podcast when you do to get your first month of cybersecurity content marketing services for free. All right, that's it. Let's get back to the pod. All right, so I got us a little bit off track there, jumping back into the scripting stuff. But let's move now, I guess, a little bit more into the full-time bug bounty stuff. So you've been doing it now for like, what, 2 months?
2 months, yeah.
2 months. All right. How you feeling, man? Do you love it? Is it amazing? Is it everything you ever wanted it to be?
It's really strange. It's great in some ways. So like background is like I decided to ask my job essentially for 3 months like unpaid leave just to try this out. And they were kind enough, I can say, but it's also like in Sweden you actually are allowed to do like up to 6 months of unpaid leave to try to start a company.
Really? Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. Very interesting.
So I don't think they could say no, but but anyhow, so so the main goal has been to see if like spending full time on this, like would it give me like a lot of like, would it enhance like my experience
money?
On bug bounties? Like, money. And,
would it give me also a lot of money? Would it enhance my money?
It's just a plausible way to survive.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Would it give you a lot of, or would it enhance what?
No, both. Like, would I find it? Because I find it really interesting and I spend a lot of time on it, but usually like in my regular work environment, like I do my full-time work and then I come home and I take care of my family, and then like I spend 2 hours at like night doing this, and I don't do like anything else.
Right.
So this is also like, can I get back some free time and can I still be successful? Or can I feel like not stressed about it, and like all of those.
Yeah, so those are the questions. That's you actually just read off the list of questions that I had for you there. And I will say, like, you've mentioned your family, and I've got some family expansions that have happened recently. And one of the things that I've been really grateful for inside of that environment, when family is taking up more time and more, investment and that sort of thing, which is great. And I love, that during the day, I do have control of that, of control of my things that I'm looking at. I can look at things that I think are interesting. Whereas before, when I was single, it was like, okay, I could do my day job, and then I'd have like a couple hours, or more than a couple hours, a decent amount of time afterwards where I could dive into these things that I'm more interested in. And I think as your family grows and as your responsibilities to your family get bigger and bigger, that time sort of shrinks, and it becomes more awesome to be able to do bug bounty full time, because you can dive deep into something you're interested during your work hours. Yeah. And
I've been listening to like all the pods and stuff that exist with these people who are doing it full time and like giving tips and tricks. And so just to preface this as well, like I made sure so I have my company now where I get my bounties too. And I had like more than enough to pay for like my salary and everything for these 3 months, like from starting out. So I would survive like without doing this. So and that's one of the things that you have to kind of consider when you have a family as well. Like I have to pay like my mortgage and like all of that stuff.
So you've set that up, you've got that in place, and then you're feeling pretty confident going into this 3 months of like, all right, either way, I'm going to be able to pay myself. So the bills are going to be paid, and then worst comes to worst, I can just go back to this company after 3 months and resume my normal life.
So what I could lose is my self-confidence if I would not find anything for 3 months, like doing this full time. That would be hard. So I was a bit nervous in the beginning because I hadn't done like anything for January, and I started doing some stuff in February, leading up to March, then when I was going to start. So I was a bit nervous that I had like my pipeline was empty and
that is tricky. So,
yeah. But so far I'm surprised that I'm still like in lack of time. Like, I got so much more time now, but I don't know what I spend it on. It's just like still like the day just passes so quickly, and I still only have like my work hours. Like I leave my kids at school and preschool at 8 in the morning, and then I get back and I start working, and at like 4 or 5 they come back. So then it's like then it's over. And then maybe I do some things later in the evening as well.
Nice.
But I've been trying to also like do more of like the home, like the chores and stuff at home. So I haven't been working 8 hours a day, maybe like 6 hours or something like that.
Yeah, and so in that 6 hours, you're focusing on primarily like GitLab, or have you switched around targets much? Or are you deep diving one target? Or
yeah, so I have my like a couple of goals that I wrote up like on this blog post that I never posted.
Okay, that's the kind of stuff we'd love to get into here on the pod. Tell me about this blog post you never posted.
Yes, I listed some stuff like the number one, like get organized, notes, automation, templates, scripts, like all of that stuff. And then like deep dive 1 or 2 targets, like new targets, write 3 blog posts, and apply for a talk, like an OWASP talk or like whatever. And I decided on these like 4 things because I wanted it to be like, even if I don't find anything, there should be like a tangible like outcome at the end. But I have failed with like most of these ones.
I love the first one is like like what every bug hunter says they're going to do. They're like, I'm going to have this automation, and this automation's going to be like finding all these bugs, and I'm just going to be like writing my notes and got my whole like API documentation built out. No, it doesn't work that way.
I mean, I spend so much time like going through my like 200 Chrome tabs, 200 Visual Studio Code, like unsaved documents that I just create like on the fly.
Like astf.txt.
Like just trying. So I've been trying hard to get more organized, but I really fail at it.
This is also one of the things I've been talking to the Kaido team about as well is like, I think one of the niches where Kaido could really shine is this whole concept of organization within your sort of hacking. And I think there's a couple ways that you could go about it. Obviously we need notes and stuff like that inside of that environment, but auto naming, tabs, trying to keep stuff unified and in one place, and assisting very cognizantly with organization could be, I think, a really big niche for tooling in this industry, because everyone struggles with that same thing that you just mentioned.
And I mean, as you have seen, like when I've read some of my write-up, or like it's not even write-ups, it's bug reports. Like I spend so much time. Like I had this day, like a Monday, 2 weeks or 1 week ago, maybe. I spent the whole day writing 2 reports. Like my 6 hours went into that.
Oh my goodness, dude.
And so that's, I cannot understand these people who are just like, just reported that, and
that's me. On. So let's talk through that. But before we get to that, I want to go back and look at your goals. So, getting tools, automation, organized. That's everyone's goal in the beginning. Makes sense as that one sort of fell off the horse. Deep diving a couple targets. What targets did you pick, and how is that going?
So that's not going that well. I picked GitLab.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. So I'm still happy with what I've been doing. So I've had like 2 main tracks. One has been like deep diving some stuff in GitLab, but then I also have had this like where I've been deep diving a topic and applying that more broadly across a couple of programs. So I had 1 week when I tried to learn everything I could about this AI chat attacks. And then I just went to, because that's everywhere now. So you just go everywhere and you try it. And I try to focus on like big public programs, because I don't know. The private invites things, those are really not for me, because I don't get any good ones. I mean, like the big public ones are better.
We gotta fix that. Okay.
But I mean, the big public ones are like, they pay a lot, and they are usually like very like well oiled.
That's true.
So, and everyone has this like chat thing. So I just like jumped around on all these programs and like tried it out and like tried to understand. So those, I did like 3 of these weeks in the beginning, like when I just focused on one type of bug and really tried to like deep dive in that. And that was like a really amazing experience.
Nice,
like
dude.
Having the time to like spend like 5 days doing that instead of just like 2 hours here and there.
You can make so much more progress when you put this time into this. And this is something we talk about as well a lot in Bug Bounty, is like this whole concept of like, a lot of people want to do this 2 hours, at the night or on the weekends or something like that when they've got time, and they get frustrated when they don't see success. And I think it takes time to be able to do it in 2 hours on the weekend. And it takes time to be able to do it, part-time, and to get to that point. And it's possible 100% to do it, just like you mentioned, but there's a lot of buildup that comes up to that, because your progress is so much slower when you're not able to devote 8 hours into deep diving a topic.
So I had this idea in my head when starting this, that I would become this like the hacker, like opening up a Burp or Kaido and just like going to a new fresh target and like looking at the requests and like finding these kind of issues there. But as it turns out, like that's probably not who I am. So I just ended up like looking at this like super niche bug. So the first week I spent on this bug type like ReDoS, like regex DOS.
Regex DOS. All right, very nice.
And so I had so that's one of my first like payouts. Now they have fixed it in GitLab. This actually like a high severity bug in the latest release. Yeah, so that was really nice.
I actually know somebody else who also goes after ReDoS in GitLab. It seems to be like a pretty common problem in that environment.
Unfortunately, they have like they have patched it in like at the language level.
Oh,
so
okay.
Right now, like right after my week of deep diving, they actually put it out of scope because they will fix it like after the summer.
Wow.
So now the glory days of
that's Ruby then, or
ReDoS
is that?
Yeah, Ruby.
Ruby. Okay, so Ruby's regular expression library.
Yeah, their
is fixing
engine has they fixed the big issues with it, and they also put in like a timer that you can set, because there are still ways to get it to DOS, but they also have this like timer option now, so you can say like anything that runs more than like a minute, just kill the process. And then it's sort of impossible to get through.
Gotcha. Okay, so you deep dive that, and it's possible in some languages, but maybe not as much in Ruby.
No, but it was still fun, and it's
you
also
did
good.
You did the chat bugs. Did you find anything cool there worth sharing? Or I know we discussed it a little bit beforehand, and it's a little bit shallow at this point, but
yeah, I mean, so that was kind of what I found out about it, is that it's actually pretty hard to find any like CVSS like to increase it from like a low medium sort of like you have to find programs where they actually integrate these toolings as you kind of did with the Google thing or whatever that was, the Bard chat thingy.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the stuff with AI is just like it's only as powerful as they let it be, right? Yeah. So like it doesn't integrate itself in terms of like make like I want to do this thing, and it doesn't just like magically know how to do that, right?
No,
An engineer has to say, okay, if they want to do this thing, then do XYZ on the back end, like make this API call or whatever, and so it has to be integrated to some level,
agency.
At like a technical right. It doesn't have its own agency, so you have to find those areas where.
Yeah, definitely.
Where you do get some agency.
And right? I think it's like valuable to look into, because it's probably just going to get worse before it gets better. Like when everyone just integrates more and more stuff into it. So it was like interesting, but it wasn't that from where I could tell now, I didn't find that much like super interesting functionality with it. It's fun to play with, like trying to trick this chatbot to like tell you stuff, but
I think that's a common experience. To be honest, the most I think the biggest thing that's going to tell you whether there's going to be chat related bugs is what features that whole chat thing has in the first place. Because if you're just chatting, it's like, okay, well, I can make you say some bad word or whatever, but the impact.
Yeah, it was like that car chat bot that was like. Some guy was like chatting with the car dealership and got the chatbot to say that, would give him this crazy low like payment deal or whatever on the car. And he was like, you guys have to uphold this now or something, right?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy precedent, to be perfectly honest. I was a little surprised to see that actually happen. But okay, so you did AI chatbot, you did ReDoS, which is a cool category. And then you did OAuth as well, right?
Yeah.
That one seems a little bit more juicy.
Yeah, that's sort of compared to the AI stuff. Like OAuth is like the gift that keeps on giving.
It really is, man.
Every time
the curse that keeps on giving.
Yeah, right.
Every time you look into it, you find some new like edge case that that you can like dig into. And then you always have to go back to this like France Rose and Dirty Dancing thing, and you find some new edge case in there as well, and so
very
was
also
like
research there.
Yeah, definitely. And that was also like jumping around between different programs. So I actually found some fun bugs that I cannot really disclose, and that's on other programs than GitLab. So.
Very nice.
So also like public programs.
So you're like, how are you feeling at this point about like income and like the day-to-day life of full-time bug bounty? Are you enjoying it? Are you stressed? Is the income there? How's it going?
So I have a problem that I target programs that are pretty slow. Like they are like have a good reputation of paying whenever, like when they have finally fixed it.
Oof.
But it's so even like GitLab can take a couple of months before you get anything out of, because they pay sometimes at initial triage, but otherwise they pay when they fix it, and it could take like 2-3 months for maybe if it's a medium. So I have this spreadsheet now when I have added like 3 tables, like what I've gotten paid, what I believe is like a minimum what I will get and a maximum what I will get. And then I have this span now from like what could be like the possible, like the best possible outcome, and then I have this what maybe could end up.
That sounds like a very wise way of doing it. I think this is one of the things that for me took a while in bug bounty, because my normal flow is like clickety clickety, I'm hacking stuff. Oh, I got it. I popped it, and then I like get up and I run into the other room and I tell Mariah, I'm like, I just popped an 100K bug, and she's like, okay, just chill out here. Okay, like don't count your eggs before they're in the basket or something. I forget. So she's got some sayings she always says like that. But it's wise because at the end of the day, like you don't know how it's going to turn out. There could be mitigating factors that you're unaware of, that sort of thing, and that can crush you.
Yeah, I definitely try to not celebrate before they pay, because sometimes even like a bug that is in like triage state, it can move to like a duplicate or whatever, like whenever they find. It
can. Well, that's good. It seems like you've got some good, healthy, sort of heart-saving boundaries in place there. So you've got this sheet set up, and maybe most of your bugs haven't gotten paid out yet. But it's looking pretty good though.
It's looking good. I've been able to pay my first 2 salaries, which is great.
Yeah.
And that. It's looking good, definitely. I'm still. It's still hard for me to understand if this is like, if I could do this, if it will like continue trickling bugs. I'm still at this place where I feel like whenever I've submitted something, I kind of feel like this is the last bug I will ever find.
Classic.
I become
classic stuff.
It was worse before, but so now I'm kind of feel like I will eventually find something new, but I don't really know when it will happen.
Yeah.
But it also helps. So targeting, for example, GitLab, I don't have to find that many bugs on those kinds of programs to actually pay my whatever, like what my goal is.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's good. It's good when you can sort of. It's helpful in the beginning when you can couple high-paying programs with a lower, budget. If you're able to control your expenditures for a little while you're building up that confidence, and while you're building up that sum of money in your company account that will eventually pay out your salary. So I think that's a really wise way of approaching it, and how I recommend most people start bug bounty full-time as well is that sort of smaller amounts, decrease the cost of living and get that freedom back where you can work on whatever you want every day, and then kind of move from there. Are you, I wanted to ask this as well, are you working at home? Do you work at your home environment? Do you work from like an office or a cafe or anything like that? Or
I've been so this is maybe something that will like get to me if I do this more, that I've been sitting at home a lot, mostly because it takes too much time to get away somewhere, and I have my equipment here and I have my screen and everything. So I've been sitting mostly at home, but I also went some days to a cafe, and that really helps to like clear your mind,
to reset, right?
Yeah.
I do a similar thing. It's like I got my home base. It's normally fine, but sometimes I got to like shake it and get out and like freshen things up, and then you can come back to it. And I think some people, they have to work at cafes or they have to work in these co-working environments. I just like, if I had to do that every day, that would be a really big inhibitor for me, I think.
No, but so that is, but I have not found any problem with getting to work. It's more, I have more issues with like structuring my time. So I kind of have this to-do list for a day, and I know that I have to do these like 4 things. I have to answer some person on a report or whatever. And then I tell myself like in the morning, like, but if I just look a little bit on this like DOM Purify bypass thing, and then 3 hours later I'm just like, okay, I have to do some work now. I just
yeah, man.
So that happens a lot. Like I'm very easily, as you have maybe seen sometimes, nerd snipeable as well. So I spend a lot of time doing stuff that is not really relevant.
That's great. My favorite kind of hacker to collab with, a nerd snipeable hacker. Now, it's good though, man, because you can deep dive the stuff that you're really interested in, and you kind of get focused on that. So that is definitely a superpower in some capacity and a hindrance in others. But I'm excited to hear you say, that you've been, succeeding with it so far, and it's been a fun experiment, and hopefully the rest of those bugs will get paid out soon, and you'll be feeling better about the results. That
I definitely feel like the biggest problem I've had has been like this separation of work and free time. Like when I go to my day job, it's very like, even if I work from home, it's very obvious that I do like this external work for someone else, and then at a certain time I just like quit and I do whatever. Now it's been more like, maybe, so like my wife asks me like, are you working now? Or like in the evening, like, are you working now or are you not? And and then I say like, no, not really, I'm just like having some fun.
Yeah. And personally, I think I prefer that sort of stance on, because unless you're doing very like singular work where like you can spend like dedicated chunks of time working on one thing, life doesn't really work like that a lot of the time. And so it's really, really difficult to just say like, oh, for this 8 hours of the day, I'm just going to not do anything except for this one thing. Like, stuff happens, stuff comes up, and being able to be flexible in that sense is really nice, where you can be like, oh, I need to go do this thing in the middle of the day. And then you come back and you sort of shift those hours around where you wouldn't maybe be working after 5 p.m. normally, but now you do, because instead of, working at noon, you were doing something else. And so now you need to work later. And so, like that, I think that flexibility is just nice to have the option, even if most of the time you do work normal hours, being able to shift stuff around and have that flexibility is super nice.
It certainly is. And I've talked about this little sign on the podcast before, but
you might have to move it over a little bit for it to show up.
Can you see it? Because I'm just going to put it right in front of my face, but
put it right in the middle. Yeah.
It says Eigyochu in Japanese, and the backside, it says Tekyubi. And these mean, open for business and closed for business. And it's just,
I've thought about this so many times.
It's so helpful, man, to have these little things like this that you can, put in your life, especially when you're an entrepreneur, when you're self-employed, to sort of differentiate in your brain, this is work and this is play, especially when it overlaps so much for us that are hobbyists, first in bug bounty, and then have transitioned into a full-time job because of the freedom benefits and the I guess just quality of life increase. So there's lots of little hacks like that I'm sure you'll develop, and this also helps with the wife too, because if you're spending so much time working and they're trying to like respect your work time and that sort of thing, but also like if you're just flittity hacking or just like, really doing something from a hobby perspective, then you could say, hey, you want to like go for a walk in the garden or something like that versus distracting you from work. So I think it's helpful to have those sort of things in place.
And I actually had that's one experience I had that was like, that surprised me, that was supposed to be really like a good thing, but then it turned into sort of a bad thing, was that I went for a break, like a vacation over Easter to Stockholm to my parents with the whole family. And because I don't have like work hours now, we were just like, we just drive on Thursday. And then we came back a week later, and then it was weekend again. And all of a sudden I had like 10 days that I hadn't really done anything. And then I started to get really stressed that it was like this unplanned leave from my own work.
Yep.
Because I could just do it, but I didn't really think through it in the beginning to say like, I need to still work like 1 or 2 days this week to get like my mental in a good state with this like thing that.
And then you feel like you're like out of the loop or out of your groove and stuff like that.
Definitely. So after that, I actually had also my worst week during this, that I didn't find anything before like Friday afternoon. I find it like this small, like really low.
I mean, this is my biggest thing, is that generally, like, I think for a lot of people, regardless of life situation, it's really important to have some sort of scheduled, structured routine that you follow. Like, regardless of if you're employed or whatever, like, at least wake up at the same time and like do like make a coffee, like, or like have some order of events, even if it's not like at the same time and stuff, but just some sort of structured routine that you can follow that helps give you like a grounding, that every day like you either start at the same or you do something that like helps you like know like, okay, like now I can start, or I can like do the things that I need to do today, instead of sort of just waking up and be like, what should I do today? Because that's a lot I found personally, especially like very, very difficult for myself to stay on track if I don't set myself like a things that I want to be doing and things that I aim to actually do. And just instead of, if I approach it just sort of like as it rolls, I'll find that I do a lot less and I'm a lot less intentional with the stuff that I'm doing.
Yeah. And I think from my side as well, having experiences many times very similar to what you just described of like, oh, wow, I accidentally just took 2 weeks off, or like, 10 days off or whatever. And I'm coming back to this and it's like, okay, now I'm stressed. I think it helps, in those sort of contexts to be like, yeah, but I just took 10 days off, like, and I just like, man, how grateful am I that I just have that flexibility and that ability to do that and reflect on that. And that's been really helpful for me, and realize that is my right as a self-employed person, because I'm making trade-offs. I don't have a guaranteed income coming in, right? And that obviously has stress associated with it. And that stress has to have a trade-off. And that trade-off, I told myself, when I did full-time bug bounty, was going to be the flexibility. And if I can't enjoy that flexibility, then it's not a good deal. So you gotta like, I don't know. For me, it's kind of like, like really twisting my own arm to like make me enjoy it.
You kind of have to learn to be conscious about it, I guess, as well. Like actually understanding, like, now I'm gonna do this, and it's gonna take time from.
I think a good way to think about it is like kind of like the unlimited PTO thing that a lot of tech companies give, right? So like as a self-employed person, you basically have unlimited paid time off. Well, time off. Let's not say paid time.
Hold up.
Right. So the real key is how do you turn this into unlimited paid time off, right? Because at the end of the day, you're the one who payrolls. Yeah. And so, finding that balance between like the time off and using that time off and not working yourself to the bone, but also making sure that you are working and finding, the time to balance work and family, and not just like, woo, like no obligations, let's go, I think it's really important.
The other day I took, it was like a Tuesday or something, and I went and played pickleball with my friends at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday. My only other friends that can go play pickleball at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday. And I was like, wow, I'm so grateful for this, because there's no one at the pickleball courts. The weather is beautiful. It's just like, and it's what a blessing to be able to do that. And I think sort of meditating in those moments and being like, this is why I do, full-time bug bounty, really helps with that. And it sounds like you're on the path to that as well, which is really good.
I think I have to do this for a longer period to start to not feel stressed, because I only have these like the limited 3 months. So I kind of want to make it worth it. But I listened again. I've listened a couple of times to the pod with Alex Chapman.
Yeah.
And he mentioned something that I try to like stay true to, which is like, he's not doing this to get rich. Like the thing with that, you can actually get like a lot of money, but you also have to like realize why you are doing it. So, and that's true for me as well. Like the point of it is to be able to do what I find interesting and fun. And I have to remind myself of that. Like, so I thought that I would be this guy like opening burp and like finding those kinds of bugs. And that's like finding like 200 IDORs, sending them in and like getting rich. But that's not even what I'm like interested in. Like, so why would I do that? So if I find the bugs that pay my bills, then I can try to spend time on like these really niche things. And while doing that, so like one of the points I had was like doing 3 write-ups or like blog posts. And I stressed out about it, and then I started writing one that I was planning to release like before this podcast. And when I was doing the write-up, I found a bypass to the bug that I was doing the write-up for. So that was great. Like I had to scrap the blog post for now, but like just I really like this word, the serendipity, which is like this idea of like, if you just do stuff, like the luck comes to you. Like if you just keep on doing things, it will just happen.
Yeah.
And I feel like that happens to me a lot. Like a lot of the bugs I find are coming just like they just appearing where I happen to dig at the moment. Like there are things like everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a great perspective, man. It seems like you got the mental for bug bounty, man. And I know it's different to talk about it on a podcast versus like actually implementing it in your own life and whether you can control those stressful times or whatever. But I think, like you said, as time passes, as you get more acclimated to that life and you become more confident in the fact like, okay, I can take 2 weeks off and feel out of my element and then get back in my element, diving back in and stuff like that, like you did that one time, right? Where you found the bug on Friday. I think that for me, it hasn't gone away quite as much, but it's nice to also, communicate with your spouse as well and say like, hey, like, no, you probably just all of a sudden haven't lost your ability to do this thing that you've been doing nonstop for the past like 5 or 6 years, and have them remind you of that. Mariah does such a great job of that, and it really really helps my mental in those times where I'm like, yeah, you know what? Actually, I found the last bug I'm ever going to find ever again, and I'm just like done as a hacker now. So yeah, it's a holistic thing, man. Full-time bug bounty, and it really does help to have a great teammate as well.
I will say though, like that's only like 50% of the battle, right? So like the other part's inside your own head. So you have to make sure that like you have somebody backing you up, but then when you go and sit down, the person who you're fighting with the most is yourself. And so being able to like deal with that and cope with that when you're like hands on keyboard is also really important.
Yeah, it is. Well, Johan, thanks so much for sharing all this stuff, man. It was an awesome episode filled with technical information, full-time bug bounty information, just a quality bug bounty episode. So thanks for all that, man. Anything you want to shout before we close this podcast out? I always ask people that at the end and they're not prepared. So
no, not really. I mean, people can. I try to keep my DMs and stuff open everywhere, so feel free to reach out. Like, that's one.
This is dangerous.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely, but it's also like with the caveat that I'm really bad at answering because I put that on my to-do list and it gets pushed down all the time. But I tried at least if people reach out with like actual questions or like concrete, like how can I do this or whatever. I try to answer them eventually. Like it can take a long time, but then I do it.
And it can lead to good collabs for you too. Like like you mentioned, and I've said this before on the pod, but like since we launched this pod, I've definitely made 5 figures worth of bounties from people reaching out to me saying, hey, here's this bug, I can't fully exploit it. And then I fully exploit it and we, get some percentage of it. So wise shout out there, Johan. I see you trying to steal some of my collabs, huh? I see how it is.
It have happened to me as well, but I have one issue with it, which is in Sweden here, we have really like strict tax laws.
Oh,
so it's really hard for me to like collab if it's not like an official collab. So that we can split it like on the platform. I don't even know how I would like tell the tax authorities about someone just sending me like a bunch of money and I'm saying just like, yeah, that was a collab. Like it will not work. So it has to be very like official, unfortunately, because some programs don't allow you to collaborate and
should make collaboration on by default.
Yeah, definitely.
Program platform.
Yeah, 100.
I don't know why this this is still a thing.
Who knows, man? Who knows? But yeah, definitely hit Johan up if you've got any crazy CSP bypasses or client-side bugs you need exploited. And yeah, I think we'll wrap it there because there's a construction noises in my house that we're gonna have to cut out. So
someone's about to fall through just the ceiling any minute now.
All right, good pod, guys. Peace. And that's a wrap on this episode of Critical Thinking. Thanks so much for listening. And if you want more critical thinking content, head over to ctbb.show/Discord. Join the Discord. There's lots of great conversations and chats going on over there. And if you want to support the show, there's the Discord subscriber tiers, which give you access to masterclasses, AMAs, hackalongs, exclusive scripts, and an exclusive chat channel with us. We'll see you there.